All right, so let's start with a big story that we're tracking on WION at this hour. The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for the coronavirus infection. Both of them are now in quarantine. Now, the President announced the news via a tweet, and all of this, of course, has come after one of Mr. Trump's closest aides, Hope Hicks, tested positive for coronavirus. Now, Hope Hicks is the 31-year-old advisor to the president and is said to be one of the closest aides of the President of the United States. And just a few hours ago, she tested positive, post which Donald Trump and Melania Trump underwent an RT-PCR test, and they too have now tested positive for the coronavirus. Hope Hicks had traveled with the president on Air Force One for the presidential TV debates in Cleveland, Ohio earlier in the week. Now, Donald Trump's physician at the White House has posted an update on the condition of the U.S. President. Dr. Sean P. Conley has written that both the American President and the First Lady of the United States at this point of time have tested positive for the coronavirus infection, but they are in good health. Now, Dr. Conley further writes that he expects that the President will be able to continue carrying on with his duties without any disruption while he goes through his recovery process. And to give us what all of this means and in terms of how all of this will play out in these crucial weeks leading up to the election, we're joined in by Mr. Stephen Golub, who is an international affairs expert, and he's joining us live from California. Mr. Golub, thank you very much indeed for joining us live on this broadcast. We've just heard confirmation of this news that's just come in, that the President of the United States of America has now tested positive for coronavirus. Now, give us a sense as to what this actually means for the elections that are coming up, and also about Trump's own handling of the coronavirus crisis. What does it say about that?
Well, first of all, thanks for WION for having me, and also congratulations on breaking this news. I found out about it from you folks, even though we're half a world away. In terms of the immediate ramifications, it does make Trump seem, while we hope for his best health and that of his first lady and anyone who becomes ill with this disease, it does make him sound kind of out of touch as he's been throughout the whole history of the way this has evolved in the U.S. Just tonight, he had said at a political dinner that the pandemic is on the way to going away, that we're getting it behind us. And now, obviously, we don't, because he's gotten ill, or he's contracted the virus. And this has been somewhat consistent in terms of his being off base with this. This has been consistent the way with how he's handled it throughout. Back in February, March, he was saying, oh, it's not a problem. We've got it under control. It'll be a few cases. It'll be gone just like that. He said it could well be gone by Easter. That's April in the United States. And he's misplayed this horribly. They were, to the detriment of tens of thousands of deaths in the U.S. that could have been avoided if he'd handled this responsibly, as any previous Republican or Democratic president would have. We're up at 207,000 at least deaths and counting.
Absolutely, indeed. At this point of time, the news that is coming in from the White House is that though Trump has tested positive, he's still in good health and he's doing fine and is on his recovery. But the larger question that I would like to ask you, Mr. Golub, is, this, of course, will have huge ramifications in these very crucial elections that are presently slated to be held on the 3rd of November. The president himself is down with COVID. This, of course, will impact campaigning for the elections. We're given to understand that the Florida campaign trip has now been cancelled at this point of time. Will Trump be able to carry on with his campaigning after that?
Presumably not, but any sane and health measure to take when someone who contracts the virus is that they be in quarantine, I believe, for at least a week or really 2 weeks. And if Trump follows that public health advice, then he should not be out campaigning. He should be remaining in his quarters in the White House, not being in touch with other people, not running any risk of other people catching the disease from him. So it presumably will knock him very much off stride at a point when he's significantly behind in the polls. And really the latest polls, even before the results from his rather poor debate performance come in, the latest polls have Joe Biden increasing his lead both nationally and in the key states that are up for grabs and that will decide the election. Now, having said that, the one caveat is it's conceivable with how much Trump has ignored sound public health advice from within even his own administration, not to mention other experts, that he conceivably could do things that no president should be doing, no regular person should be doing in terms of getting out and campaigning and making himself a presence on the American scene. That's conceivable, but the news that he's canceled his Florida trip is an indication that perhaps even Donald Trump is at this point, when it comes to his own situation, following sound medical advice.
Absolutely, indeed. And also looking as to how the coronavirus pandemic had played out in the United States from a distance, issues such as wearing the mask had become an extremely politicized issue. Trump often used to appear in public without wearing a mask. It was only in recent days that he started wearing a mask, and now he has tested positive himself. Does this now put to rest the various conspiracy theories and the various political positions that people used to take in the United States about something as basic as wearing a mask?
That's a great question. I would hope so. We all would hope so. But I'm afraid the answer is no. There will still be people who will say, well, he could have gotten it anyway, with or without a mask. Or that a mask impinges on their freedom, even though we know that it's not just a matter of protecting yourself, it's really a matter of protecting other people and other people's freedom and health when you wear a mask. So I just don't think it's going to end that debate, as ridiculous and as counterproductive as it is for this country. Our own Centers for Disease Control director said recently that if everyone wore masks, we could cut in half the number of deaths. We could save 100,000 lives between now and the end of the year. Donald Trump disputed that just a few days ago. So as good as your question is, and as logical as the answer would be to say, yes, this will put that debate over wearing masks to an end, no, I'm afraid it won't.
Absolutely, indeed. Mr. Golub, do continue to stay on with us, because we'd like to listen to what Donald Trump, in fact, had to say just before the test results of the coronavirus infection came out for him. Let's listen in to what the American president had to say.
She did test positive. I just heard about this. She tested positive. She's a hard worker. A lot of masks. She wears masks a lot, but she tested positive. And I just went out with a test. I'll see what, because we spent a lot of time, and the First Lady just went out with a test also. So whether we quarantine or whether we have it, I don't know. It's very hard when you're with soldiers, when you're with airmen, when you're with the Marines, and and the police officers. I'm with them so much. And when they come over to you, it's very hard to say, stay back, stay back. It's a tough kind of a situation. It's a terrible thing. So I just went for a test, and we'll see what happens. I mean, who knows? But Hope very well. She's fantastic, and she's done a great job. But it's very, very hard when you are with people from the military or for law enforcement, and they come over to you, and they want to hug you, and they want to kiss you, because we really have done a good job for them. And you get close, and things happen. I was surprised to hear with Hope, but she's a very warm person with them, and she knows there's a risk, but she's young. And I just went out for a test. They just do it. It'll come back later, I guess. And the First Lady also, because we spend a lot of time with Hope and others. So we'll see what happens.
All right, so that was the President of the United States, Donald Trump there. He was talking to his favorite news channel, Fox News. This was an interview that he gave just a few minutes before the test results for the President and the First Lady came out. At that time, it was only Hope Hicks, one of the close confidants, aides and advisors to the President, who tested positive for the coronavirus infection. And Mr. Golub, if I can, bring you back in on this. We just heard Trump there. He said that Hope Hicks has tested positive and that he has given his test, and now that test has turned out to be positive for him as well. He also went on to state something very important. He said that, look, as a part of my job responsibilities, I meet many of the top military officials, police officials and other members of the administration who work very closely with me. So at this point of time, what are we looking at? All of these military officials and members of the administration who've come in contact with the president, one would believe will also be tested for the coronavirus now.
Well, yes, I think a lot more people will be tested in and around the White House. There is an element of dishonesty, and this is nothing unusual for Donald Trump, in the way he presented his contact with the public. It's quite possible, none of us can ever know for sure, but it's quite possible that he simply caught it from Hope Hicks. That was a person he was in regular contact with, and in situations where he might have been, talking closely with her or touching the same surfaces as her. But at the same time, Donald Trump was the beneficiary of some extraordinary public health measures in terms of people around him are going to meet with him being tested, in terms of his keeping people or his staff keeping people, including, I think, many of those police and military officers he's talking about at a real distance in ways that no regular Americans can do. But he, as president, had special precautions taken for him. So I think yes, there should be a lot more people in and around the White House will be tested, including Vice President Pence, I would think. But where he said that he might have gotten this because he was out among the public and with police officers, that's just Donald Trump trying to turn this issue, this public health issue, to his political advantage by pretending that he was in regular close contact with police, military, etc.
Absolutely, indeed. So a lot of the staff of the White House will have to perhaps undergo the test now. And also, I would like you to weigh in on how the Democrats would be looking at this development, because the Democrats have been tearing into Trump's handling of the coronavirus crisis. And here the president himself, despite the protocol and the various procedures that had been set up around him so that he does not contract the virus himself, has now tested positive. How Joe Biden's campaign look at this?
Very smart in a lot of respects. And one respect is when Trump does something or says something very stupid and counterproductive, they kind of let the news just roll with that. So yes, I would think, and this is just a guess, I'm speculating that they would express the best wishes for the presidents and the first ladies and everyone else around their health. But they won't gloat about this, because that could be counterproductive. They may let all sorts of journalists legitimately say, well, look, Donald Trump was saying that the pandemic was behind us just tonight, and now he has contracted this contagion. And they may let some political action committees that are kind of loosely aligned with them make hay over this. But I think the Democrats themselves will be, including Biden, will be sympathetic and will let the negative reverberations of this echo without their playing it up very heavily themselves. I think that would be consistent with they've let Donald Trump kind of step on his own message and hurt himself. And this, in a way, would be a continuation of that. If I could add just one thing briefly, it's that I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump comes through this without any health problems, and it's too early to be sure whether he'll be affected or badly affected by this. But if he does come through this without bad health problems, he may then turn around a week or two from now and say, look, it's not that bad. I got it. I didn't get very sick. And he may try to exploit this, even though his exploitation of this will mislead many people who may end up getting very sick by virtue of not taking the proper precautions.
I think you've made a very important and an interesting point there. Do continue to stay on with us, Mr. Gola, because I would just like to share a bit of what the Cornell University has had to say, where one of the studies that was conducted by the Cornell University says that Donald Trump is perhaps the root of a lot of COVID-19 related misinformation. The study has concluded that the American president has been the single largest driver of misinformation during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is by an American university and a very established one. Now, the findings of the study were published on Thursday, which identified 11 widespread misinformations or conspiracy theories and subtopics. The media mentions of the president made up by far the largest share of what the World Health Organization has termed as infodemic. Now, in the month of March, Donald Trump had declared anti-malarial drug hydroxychloroquine as a game changer. In the month of April, he suggested at a White House briefing that perhaps an injection inside the human body of a disinfectant, such as a bleach, perhaps could combat the virus. He said that he was just thinking aloud, but this was something that was very widely reported, and quite a few people actually went on to try this out. On the 23rd of April, Donald Trump floated the idea of using ultraviolet light to kill COVID-19. On the 24th of April, there were more than 30,000 articles about miracle cures categories, which was a spike of almost about 300% in terms of these miracle cures. None of them worked, but these were published. The study has determined that Donald Trump, in many ways, because of his statements, drove a lot of these conspiracy theories. According to the Cornell study, the most prevalent topic of misinformation was the miracle cure one, which accounted for more misinformation than the other 10 topics combined. Mr. Golub, if I can get you back in on this, the president, in the way that he's spoken about the coronavirus, he initially had said that this may perhaps be nothing more than a little flu, and also the kind of stuff that he perhaps tried to state, not wearing a mask in public, and also speaking of, there's a way if we could get some disinfectant into our bodies, that would clean up the virus completely. For the kind of bizarre statements that he has made, did he make things more difficult for the health authorities in combating the spread of the coronavirus?
Oh, certainly, and extremely so. I don't know of any world leader, except for perhaps for the president of Brazil, who's been spouting disinformation the way Donald Trump has. And even though that was quite a good list you just provided of disinformation he's provided, misinformation he's provided, in some ways you only scratch the surface. There, you could easily, if we had more time, go through 30, 40, 50 more things he's done and said to convey exactly the wrong information to the American public. Just in the last debate, in one of his 70-odd interruptions of his opponent, Joe Biden, he mocked Joe Biden because he said that Biden was wearing the biggest mask Trump had ever seen, as though Biden had been wearing such a big mask, but the real point being as though wearing a mask is something ridiculous, or wearing a big mask is something ridiculous. He's been saying that a vaccine will be available before Election Day, which is barely a month from now. And all sorts of, and he and his administration have forced the Centers for Disease Control to put out incorrect advice to the American public. In some cases, it's been corrected subsequently, in some cases not. So, yes, this has been a historically bad performance by a U.S. president in dealing with a crisis. I really don't think we've ever had anyone handle something as badly, handle a threat to our national health, our national security, as poorly as Donald Trump has. And it's all to try to prop up the stock market, to try to artificially keep the economy going, even though there's no real cure for our economy until we get the virus under control. It's been an absolutely horrific, irresponsible performance.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Stephen Golub, for joining us. Although it's so late in the night in the United States, thank you very much for making time and being a part of this discussion. This, of course, is a huge development that we will, of course...